Alright, you're just gonna have to bear with me here for a bit, because there's a lot to go over here, and it's gonna take a while to explain all of it, but just bear with me, we'll get through this together. This is Battleship, as coded in C++ by me. It is around 426 lines, it looks like. This is all, like, bonus, and there's also some bonus up here, so it's a little bit less than that, but what it does is it contains, there is a ship class, there is a board class, and there is a game class. We will be going over all three in order. So let's start off with the ship class. The ship class contains private variables for name, size, coordinates, hit points, and horizontal vertical. This is something I'll get into later, but all the others are pretty self-explanatory. Name is a string, size is an int, that's how big the ship is. Vector, okay, coordinates is a vector pair of ints, which means it's a vector of a pair that contains two ints, that contains, like, the coordinates for each segment of the boat. Hit points is, of course, how many points of damage your ship can take before it sinks. And HV says whether or not it's horizontal or vertical oriented. This will come into play once you start placing ships. So here we have the constructor, which asks you to name, size, and the size has to be 2, 3, or 4, like regular battleship. And then it has a throw and a catch for this, and if it catches it, it just sets it to 2 by default. And then hit points is set to size, because that's how battleship works, you know. The size is equal to how many hits it can take. Set chords is a very complicated thing, but we'll get through this together. There's an int x and an int y. It asks you to input the coordinates, and it puts them into x and y. Now, it is a little weird, because for some reason, it just wouldn't work if I made it so you put x in first. So I made it so you put in y, then x. And that made it work properly. So, you know. Anyways. This whole chunk right here is for detecting if it's within the bounds of 0 to 9. And if it's not, it autocorrects it to the closest number to what it would be. Here's where horizontal vertical comes in. You input H or V. If it's H, that means that your ship will be horizontal. If it's V, your ship will be vertical, and it'll make it when it's building the pairs, it will do it in, like, a specific way, depending on if it's H or V. There's also a throw and a catch there. Okay. Here's another error code for if you place your ship out of bounds, and that autocorrects it to fit within the bounds of the 10 by 10 grid. Okay. See, we got through that together. Set chords is sort of similar to that one, except, well, there's a second set chords, and that is for inputting X and Y directly. This is for saving and loading. We'll get to that later. Get size is to return the size. Set size is to return with a parameter, or to set it with a parameter, which is used for saving and loading. Get HV is to return HV. Get HP is to return hit points. Set HP is to set HP with a parameter. Get chords returns coordinates. Return chords actually is a little bit weird. It returns the like origin coordinates, so that when you it's for saving and loading. We'll get to that later. Get name returns name. Set name sets name with a parameter. Is sunk is a function called at the end of every turn to check and see if a ship is sunk. If it is, it returns true. If not, it returns false. Receive hit just knocks down your hit points by 1. Alright, that's our first class. Next class is board. And it has 2 private variables. that being a vector of chars, which is the board, and a vector of ships called ships. The constructor resizes the board to be 10 by 10, and then it just fills it with circles, which is empty water. Place ship has a ship parameter, and it creates, like, a coord store is for storing the coordinates for each ship as you go. No. It's for storing the coordinates of the ship that you're on. That's what it is. And then it does get size, which then it loops it for each segment of the ship. That's what it was. Sorry. And then pushback, it adds it to the list of ships up here. Cool. Get HP returns HP of a ship specified by the parameter. Receive attack is very complicated. Not very, actually. That's a different one I'm thinking of. XY is used to store the input coordinates for your attack. Attack coords is it checks to compare it to no, attack coords is a variable that stores it in a way that you can compare it to ship coordinates. So it takes XY and puts them in attack coords first and second. And then it compares board XY to S, which is to see if there is a ship there at all. And then it checks to see which ship it is right here. And then it replaces the spot at the attack with X, puts out kaboom, and then if is sunk is correct, then it also outputs was sunk. Sorry, I had to get something out of my teeth. Okay. This also checks to see if you've already hit that spot, in which case it tells you, and then else is if nothing hits at all, and it does sploosh. Get ship info. This is for saving and loading. Display board outputs the board with fancy numbers and all that. Export board is for exporting for saving loading, but I actually never ended up using that. So honestly, I might get rid of that. Okay. Set coords is for setting coordinates for a certain ship specified by a parameter, and then X and Y is the coordinates that you want to set it to. Get ships, return ships. And that is the end of that. Alright, class game. The game class, if you will, has 4 private variables. It is board, P1 board, and board P2 board, which are player 1's board and player's 2 board. Current player tracks what player's turn it is at the moment, and then turn counter is a little feature I wanted to add where it just counts how many turns you've been playing the game for. Get board 1 returns board 1. Get board 2 returns board 2. Start game is the meat of the thing. Turn input is something we'll use later. This runs the player through creating 3 ships, or each player through creating 3 ships. Then it asks for input on current player to see who decides, or to see who goes first. And then we have the regular turn stuff. So I actually need to take some of this and copy that. Let me get rid of that real quick. Put one board. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. So essentially what this is it's a little menu that lets you decide on what to do. So if you input A, you can do the attack phase, which ends your turn afterwards. D displays your board. Say S saves, and L loads. We'll get to these two later because they're complicated. Both players can do that. And if somehow anything else happens, if something weird happens, it defaults to player 1. And then once everything is over, the game is over. Switch player switches players. But I found it to not be super useful because I didn't like having it toggle. So I just manually switched it each time. I found it to be a lot easier. Save game saves the game. It saves it to battleship save.txt. Turn counter, it outputs turn counter, player 1 board, and player 2 board for get ship info, which I showed earlier. Load game does an if stream save file for battleship txt, and it's got all these temps for storing data as it goes along. So first it gets the turn counter, loads it, outputs it, and then for these for loops are for all 3 ships for each player. So it gets the ship, sets the name, or it gets the name from the file, sets the name on the ship, gets the size from the file, sets the size on the ship, and then it uses that size to set the coordinates for each segment of the ship. And then it does that for player 2 as well. And then it outputs the names of each ship, and then outputs the board of each player. And then we have our main. See, that wasn't so bad. So yeah, there is my program. And I will be doing another video demonstrating it because it needs a video to be demonstrated. So I'll see you there.